you got me going because you're like, how do we get the right people in the room? And then you brought up a really interesting point off air about parties versus fundraisers. And I think that those kind of coalesce, those points.
Sure. Well, first of all, for everybody that doesn't know me, my name is Dan Lyles. I'm a professional fundraising auctioneer. So I work primarily out of North Carolina and South Carolina. So getting the right people in the room. I think this started from a conversation I posted on LinkedIn. And I had said that was it because one of my groups decided not to do a paddle raise?
Sure. That was like some board engagement piece. Now, I definitely want to get into boards. That's a very hot topic for us, for sure. Maybe go 30,000 foot view and get myopic if you don't, even with different events that you've been exposed to and what you're seeing in real time with that.
So I have a pretty high retention rate. So I have clients that I've worked with now, one of my clients for 11 years. And one thing that I do that I would recommend anybody on the donor development side or any auctioneers, they really need to be buddying up with the person on the nonprofit side who is doing the donor development or the advancement officer, those people. Because one thing I do that I like to do is when I get into a fundraiser, especially in a gala setting, is I always say, show me the money. I want to know where the people are that have the money. Now, I know in every auction, you put all the money makers and the big sponsors in the center and stage right and stage left, right? But I want to know specifically who those people are. Who's my premium sponsor, where's their table? And I also want to know names, because I'm actually pretty good with names. And I'll tell you, for the most part, this is going to spoil it a little bit, but something I like to do is I keep names of my events of people I meet on my phone. So I go to the event that I'm doing and I know who a lot of my donors are year after year. And those people will carry on spending with me. And especially in the Charlotte area, all the socialites kind of hang out with each other and they all go to my events and they all jump around to my events. And so I know these people by name. I call them by name. They like messing with me on the auction block and they're not afraid to spend. So I guess one of my favorite things to do is work with the donor development people, because I want to know like who these people are. I want to be introduced to them. And I posted something, Bryson Young, she's with Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired. She's really good about that. She is a go-getter. And that is one thing that she always does. As soon as I get there and cocktail hour opens, she's walking me around, introducing me to heavy hitters. And so I guess that's one thing that I do.
I think it's awesome. I think expanding on that too, it's, that's so clever, and you keep the people in your phone and what have you. But that connection and, well, it's very cliche to say this, but I think you'll agree. But it's like people buy from people. Yeah. So, and if it's a joint effort, like you said, you buddy up with someone on the dev team and you're introducing you could stir up tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands.
Exactly. And it happens all the time. And I think it's oftentimes overlooked. And another thing is I think that, some auctioneers are very specific about, they don't want to have dinner. They don't want to, drink or socialize and stuff. They're just there to work. And I get that if you're that kind of person. For me, like a lot of times my donor development people, I'll be working with these organizations for many years, and they'll sit me with their big players, because when I know those names and those people feel comfortable with me, they're going to spend, and they're going to spend big. And a good example is, I do a really large fundraiser at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte. It's huge. And there's some guys from a bourbon company, Oak Lore. They're great bourbon, but they were there and we were just chatting, and I know them from another event. And they all came there, like, Dan, so good to see you. And they're like, we're thinking about making a big splash here. Let's do like a $10,000 donation level. We'll do a match at 10 grand. And I was like, guys, I've already got a 10 grand. If you want to make a splash, you got to give me 25 and I'll do a match there for you. And I'll plug Oak Lore. And they're like, all right, done. Let's do it. And that was going into the auction. Before I even stepped foot on the stage, I had already had a 10 from the donor development officer, but then I had a 25 going in. And I think those relationships are super important, especially if you're going back year after year to get to know these people, because they'll do that kind of stuff. It's great.
I love the story. I love that. I love that you're, swinging for the fences on that too. We're always be like, how do I get more for my match? And you ask for more. That's one way you can go about
exactly. It. I have a pretty significant sales background, and one of the things I always tell you is you got to ask for the sale, right? So I think that's important. You can't be afraid as an auctioneer. The thing I find interesting is when people book fundraising auctioneers that don't like to do a paddle raise, they feel it's too salesy. And so I've been booked, like at least 2 of my events every year. I get booked just to do the MC and the paddle raise and not the
Right.
live auction, which I find
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. Well, that's going to open up another ball of wax I want to get to too. But I want a couple things. But a couple things I hear, I deduce from what you just mentioned as well is like, and hopefully I'm not sounding too cliche. This is a relationships game.
Yeah.
And I don't mean for folks doing I'm talking about fundraising in general. It's just like it's these people and coming back year after year. They know what they're there to do. They just needed to be invited. They need to be guided.
Exactly.
And if we can just like stand on a soapbox and tell everyone in dev, every development fundraising professional, it's like, this is a relationship. Is it a long game? Absolutely. Does it take some time? Absolutely. Can it start at an event at the $5,000 level that turns into some legacy? Absolutely. This is a relationships game and it's a long play. The sooner folks realize that. And I also say, Dan, and you can disagree with me if you, I call it's very, very simple for me to say this is a hospitality business as well. Mm-hmm. And I define that as thoughtfulness personified in how you made the other person feel.
Yeah, I love that, Trevor. It's a really good point because, especially when you do a lot of these events and you go to the same one year after year, I mean, you've got guests in there that are laughing at your same jokes. You're doing the same thing you do every year. And I know from an event planning side, you got to freshen that up with different ideas and stuff. But as the auctioneer, you want them to have so much fun and enjoy hanging out with you so much that they're going to bring their friends. And their friends are going to feel that little bit of pressure to donate as well, And so you want them to have so much fun and excitement in the live auction and the paddle raise that they're like, oh, I got to bring people back to this thing.
Yeah. I think it's massive. And keep folks coming back and keep them inviting folks that have capacity and that care. I think it's massive. Right. Cannot be spoken to enough. Hey, as you can tell, I'm really horrible at introductions, but we've become friendly, and I want you to talk to the audience. Like, you have an art background, sales background. Obviously, you're a world-class fundraising auctioneer. How, what got you deciding that you wanted to do fundraising events, or kind of like what got you off the couch in that avenue? Yeah.
It is a very unique story, but there are a few of us out there, and you're going to find that our stories are very similar. So funny enough, I worked on cruise ships, and I worked for an organization called Park West Gallery. And so they're the world's largest art dealer. And they have galleries in New York and Las Vegas and Miami Lakes, Florida, and Southfield, Michigan, but they are primarily contracted out on cruise ships. So, I spent 7 years out there basically selling art. Well, the thing is they trained us as fundraising auctioneers because they wanted us to be able to engage with the audience in a different way and not make it pretentious like the big level New York art galleries. And so we had to learn how to relate to audience members better. So we were doing like 3 auctions a week. And it was probably the best sales training I've ever had. It was the greatest experience of my life. It really was. But it set me up because they trained us as benefit auctioneers. So funny enough, a lot of us who retired as successful auctioneers with Park West Gallery went on to become fundraising auctioneers. So you probably know Chris Marchand and Luke Proctor. Maybe you know him out of Florida. Both of those guys are just rock stars. You might know Justin Swisher. I mean, he's the main guy in like Virginia and DC. I mean, that guy's a beast. He's incredible. And then you get like Ryan Watson's and he's Canadian. He's in Ontario. You got Crystal Campbell. She's out in BC. You got, Mike Casacci up in Buffalo. You got
all cruise ship.
All ex-Park West people. So, this might be, all right, I have to be careful when I say this, but like, I know that BAS does a lot of good for auctioneers, benefit auctioneer specialists, right? Sure. Go into that and learning how to hone your skills and stuff. But I would venture to say that some of the top talent right now in the fundraising space is coming out of Park West because we have something that a lot of people never got. And for one, it was, a great auctioneer might do 40, 50, 60, 70 auctions a year. Well, we were doing 3 a week. So in a 6-month contract, that's like double what any fundraising auctioneer would do. And we're like learning on the fly how to sell, how to engage with guests, what they respond to. And a lot of that stuff carries over into fundraisers. And I'll say this because I know that some of my Park West guys are probably listening to this, but even like we have this little magic phrase when we sell multiples, especially with consignment, that we call who else wants one. I know it's silly, but how typically like if we were selling your Cabo or your all-inclusive Mexico or something, you roll up the bid and then you roll it back and you sell it 2, 3 bidders that were going at it. And then you say, who else wants one right now? Who else wants one? $2,500 or $3,000. And then bid cars just stop popping up. Now, I know I'm not saying anything that any of the top tier auctioneers out there don't know, because we're all selling multiples. But even, I guess, addressing this for more like an entry level, intermediate, or somebody just starting out, for an auctioneer, I mean, just saying that magic phrase, who else wants one, and you'll start watching bid cards pop up all over the room. It's great. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. You got reps, man. That's what you got. You got chops and you got reps when you're.
Yeah, we got our 10,000 hours. We got those 10,000 hours a lot quicker, and I think it set us up to be successful. And the great thing about it is, like, when you're learning fundraising, you're doing it, we all kind of follow a general structure. We all kind of know how to do it. You know, we hone those skills if we go to BAS or something. But for the most part, we tend to do the same thing. We set up our live auction the same. We do our orders the same. We'll all do the bell curve, you know, and set that up. We do paddle raises the same. But I do think that one thing that I learned from coming from the sales side is we're not afraid to ask for the money. Yeah. So we'll talk to big donors and talk about match gifts, or the donor development officer never knew what was going on. And I do have a war story. Okay, I got a lot of war stories because we just do in our industry, right? But Habitat for Humanity did an auction for them, and it was the 40th anniversary, and the guy that does donor development, named Jeremy, he came up to me. He's like, hey, I got a guy, his daughter, you know, worked on houses with us. She volunteered, and he does real estate, and I think he wants to make a big splash, but I don't know what that is. Will you talk to him? And so we started talking, and I was like, you know, hey, Jeremy just told me you're interested in doing something. I don't know what that is, but it's our 40th anniversary. Would you do 40 grand, kick off my paddle raise? And he was like, yeah, I could do that. As simple as an ask, right? And then he had fun in the live auction and ended up spending another 15. But where was that 40 grand had the sales guy not asked for it? So I think that's important to know. Like, you got these people here that want to give. You just got to give a reason.
Yes, they're all there for a reason. They know, they're not dumb. Folks that have capacity are very, very smart about how they made their money, how they keep it, how they grow it, and how they give it away.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? We committed that grand so fast, I probably undercut what I could have done.
I get it, right? You're like, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think it blends well into talking to fundraisers too, regardless of where they're at in their journey, though. Folks are deathly afraid they don't have your resume and dossier, and they're deathly afraid to ask folks for money, and that's why it's so important that they hire folks like you.
Yeah,
but it also you are unabashed and you've got a ton of reps, right? Mm-hmm. But talking to the fundraisers, we say things, and I want you to speak to it and your opinions about it. But we say things like, "Hey, let's get the ask out of the way. Why don't you invite them to give at the 40?" You know what I mean? Like, so if you're coaching up folks that are actually getting like sponsorships for an event and asking them to swing for the fences, or you're coaching them on your consultative side, how are you reframing that thought process to kind of take the fear, that trepidation that folks might have about asking for those big dollars if they've maybe only gotten 25 before, but they're asking for 50 now, or once again, inviting folks? Like, what are some like tricks of the trade, so to speak, or how you consult folks on how to do that with imparting what you've learned? Yeah.
Well, the main thing, of course, I've got a sales background, so I realize it's pretty uncomfortable for people. But typically, there are people that are doing donor development or advancement officers. They are not scared to ask for the money because that's what they do on a daily basis. So there's a little bit of sales training there. There is a little bit of how you should be doing it, and there's gentle coaxing, And so I was talking. This was an executive director. She didn't have a donor development person, but we were just talking, and she was letting me know what seed gifts we had, and I said, you might have to just prompt them a little bit and just see where they are. They gave 20 grand last year. If they're willing to step it up, do you want to start off at 25 this year? Are you comfortable where you are? What would you like to do that would really push us forward next year? And if they're not afraid to ask, they'll do that. And the donors themselves, they'll tell you if they can't do it. They'll be like, it's not a good year. And a good example of that is one donor that consistently would give 25 grand at the same event every year. my advancement officer told me that he probably wasn't going to do the same this year because he didn't have a great year in real estate. And she sat me at his table and we chatted before. And I was like, hey, man, I know you consistently do this every year. Where are we with that? And he was like, Dan, I just can't do it. It was a bad year. 25 is just a lot of money. And I just don't think we have it in us this year. And so I was like, no worries, man. Look, if it gets to the point in the paddle raise and you feel like you want to donate and you want to make a splash, you call me down. Typically, auctioneers don't give up the microphone. We don't like to do that because you never know what a guest is going to say. But I knew this guy, and I was like, just call me down, let me know. Anyway, he didn't end up giving the 25, but he bid on a $10,000 live auction item to Bali, and then at the $10,000 level, he kicked it off. So it was like he got in and give it 20 grand anyway.
Totally.
So I guess that point is just, in sales, we're always taught to try to overcome objections. Just because somebody tells you no, you don't know their story, but it doesn't really mean he doesn't have the money to do it. He still can do it. It's just sometimes it's got to be the right moment, and it's also got to feel like there's not a lot of pressure there to do it. He needs to feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, I love it. Great. More. Yeah, you got more stories. It's good.
Sorry, man. Stories. We're a big ego business, so everybody's going to talk to you about their war stories.
I get it, man. I love it. And it's healthy. It's not unhealthy ego either. You are very, very talented at what you do. It's obvious. You said something that caught my attention recently, and I want you to embellish on it, because we get a lot of folks talking to us about, the shop down the street or the organization down the way, we're competing with, that's my donor, this and that. And you said something very interesting. I think we'll bleed into that conversation. Hopefully the audience can take some away with, where you're very comfortable with competition, and you brought it up with auctioneer, with a particular auctioneer, someone that remains nameless, whatever. It doesn't really matter, because it doesn't, that part doesn't matter. The point was, it caught my attention big time because you were very honest, and you were talking about how competition is good. And how it brings everyone. I'm paraphrasing, and if I'm wrong, you fill in the blanks, please. But it rises. It makes you. I say it forces you to sharpen your pencil.
It does. It forces you to be better. It is. Competition is good. And I read a lot of sales books and business books, and one of the things they tell you about, like, if you're going to start an Italian restaurant, for instance, you wouldn't go to where there's no other Italian restaurants. You'd go to where there's one established, and you compete with them. And then the water in the harbor rises, all the boats do with it. That's the general consensus, the idea behind it, right? Yeah. When I started out years ago, Trevor, there was an old boy auctioneer, and was very threatened by me coming in. I guess he saw that I could be talented. And so when I deal with like newer auctioneers and stuff, I try to be very, helpful as much as I can. And like, if they have questions, as much as I can to help them. I don't want to be afraid that somebody's going to come along and take my job, right? But this old boy in the industry basically felt threatened enough that sent me an email, and it put a bad taste in my mouth for that. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy. And so what I was specifically talking about in that post that you mentioned was you shouldn't be afraid of competition, because for one, it's just going to make you better. For two, if somebody's going to come along that is a better fundraising auctioneer than you and gets your client and pulls them away from you, they probably deserve them more than you. Maybe you should step up your game. Maybe you should try harder. Maybe you should hone your skills more. That's the one thing I was saying. But the other thing was, there's how many nonprofits are there in the United States? I mean, millions, right? And like, there's plenty of business to go around. So you shouldn't feel threatened that somebody else is going after same nonprofits as you. We should all be trying to make everybody successful so that we can make them the most money that they make. And then I just think that, having good relationships with just people in general is going to, turn into good things for you. So that's what I was kind of mentioning in that post.
I got it. I read it loud and clear. I was grateful for it because it was refreshing. I got similar messages when I got in the space, and tripped and fell and into this rabbit hole that we still don't know how far it goes with helping organizations raise money. And so, and I'm competitive as well, but not at the sake of tearing down other people's shops. Right. It's interesting. A lot of things I pulled from that post and was talking about it with you is, well, first off, karma is ROI positive. It'll play out really, really well over time. Nice guys don't finish last. That's for sure. But like you said, the sheer number of organizations, the sheer number of events. Also, by the way, whether you agree with me or not, events aren't going anywhere. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah, and I mean, and we talk to organizations and everyone that will listen ad nauseum about the tremendous amount of money in the system, and we're very glass half full, very optimistic folks in general. But getting folks to buy in, be like, yeah, competition is good. Okay, cool. Once again, it forces us to sharpen our pencil. Everyone wins because we all
Right.
get better, and we all sharpen our skills and all these things. But there's so much. I guess they cliche once again, man. It's like the abundance mindset is not a joke. It's very,
I
very
agree.
real. Yeah, it's
I
very
agree.
evident.
And
Yeah,
I've had organizations that reach out to me, and maybe they couldn't afford me the first year, and I've done this like a couple of times, and I still did all their consultation, and I actually worked with an MC to help them have a good fundraiser, told them what they should do for live auction, ordered it for them, explained the paddle raise, coached them through it. They had a decent auction. They were very grateful, and they hired me the next year. So I
yeah.
just think stuff like that, what does it matter if I can't work on that day because they can't get me that year? I'll go and book something else, and then hopefully they'll hire me the next year. And they did, and I'm hired again for this year, so it's great.
It worked out just fine.
It
Yeah.
works out.
But
Yeah.
it's amazing how this for-profit side lends itself so nicely to what we're doing when we're coaching organizations about like just seeing the big picture. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
and staying with folks and how it's so relationship driven, and months go by very, very quickly. Long story short, it's the
Mhm.
years that stack up that matter the most. Very, very good. Hey, you said a few things. You shared that example of the guy that gave 10 the paddle raise and 10 the live auction. And I'm going to ask you to get a little opinionated, just kind of like rapid fire a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah. So people will hire you. I'll preface it with this: fundraising is an and game, in our opinion, not an or game.
Mhm.
And it gets very frothy sometimes when folks go, "Oh, you don't need a live auction." Well, we've had a live auction for the last 10 years. Oh, no, you don't need that. You just need the paddle raise. And if you're saying it, that's fine. And I will have the
Sure.
discussion, not even a debate. But we're such huge proponents of like, well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
A couple first rapid fire question: does the live auction rob from the fund of need?
No is my answer to that. Can I expound on it?
That's why you're here, my brother. Yeah.
Well, I had this so similar. I had somebody was asking if they should do a silent auction. In my opinion, the silent auction isn't necessarily evil. I don't think that money always transfers over to the live and the paddle raise, and I think that gives people something to do during the cocktail hour, and those people like doing silent auction stuff, right? And so, and I had an organization that was like, well, we don't like doing all the procurement, so we're just going to drop that, and that money's going to pull over. And I told him, I was like, listen, I'm very confident in my abilities in the live auction and paddle raise. I feel like I'm very strong at that. But I'm telling you right now, it is not likely that money's going to shift over. And sure enough, it didn't. We still had a bang up auction, but the fundraiser still was like kind of even coming off of the year before where we had a huge one. But for the live auction versus the paddle raise, you probably know this because you're in the industry. But for people that don't know it, for other nonprofits out there listening, a lot of auctioneers know this. But you're talking to two different bidders for the most part. Your live auction bidders are typically a transactional bidder. They want to do something and get something in return. They want to win the trip to Mexico. And a lot of times I say those people are many times the extrovert in the relationship, right? Like me, I'm the extrovert in my relationship. My wife's the introvert. But for me, I'll get into a live competition with somebody bidding. I'll mess with the auctioneer. That's fun to me. It would terrify her. So she's my philanthropic bidder, right? So we got transactional versus philanthropic. You capture them in the live auction, you do the show, and get the excitement and fun up. And then you do the mission moment. You bring that energy level down and you say, hey, we know the live auction is not for everybody. It only captures a small percentage of the people, but this part of the program, the paddle raise, this is for everybody. This is everybody in the room's opportunity to donate at some level and give to help XYZ organization carry on their mission. So I think you're talking to two different bidders, whether or not people agree with me or not. But for the most part, if that person that lost a live auction item and was the underbidder will not necessarily donate when it comes to the paddle raise, I don't think.
Let me ask you a question about the case study that you threw out there, where the gentleman gave 10 the live and 10 in the fund of need. What is he? Yeah, I mean, is he a transactional and philanthropic bidder? And obviously, those things can coexist.
Yeah, he is primarily, okay, he's a special case. So basically I'm eating my words now because I just crossed him.
No, you're not. You're not. Hey, that's why I'm here.
For the most part, it's
Yeah.
typically, I'm dealing with a live auction bidder, and then I'm dealing with everybody else, the other 80% in the audience. For him, he has a very gregarious personality. And so he typically would do the paddle raise because he was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a $50,000, start match gift right now, or a $25,000 match gift. So he's still my transactional bidder, but he was just using his platform in the paddle raise to be the star. That was what that case was.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. That's fun. It's a zinger.
You got
and I also, no, it's okay. That wasn't the point, brother. It's all good what's coming out of it. But I also heard you say something naturally. There was a rhythm though, and I wanted you to share your opinions. And I understand the atmosphere is different at every event. Every event's so unique, and folks are testing, and maybe they're introducing the paddle race for the first time, or even the live auction for the first time, or some combination therein. But I did hear you say a natural cadence just now, or you purported a natural cadence where it was live auction first, paddle raise after. Is that a strong recommendation that you make for most clients? And I'm not typecasting you in one. Sure. Once again, with the preface that every event's so unique and has its own atmosphere. We'll talk about that a little bit for folks, because we get that question a lot. Where should I put this? And what have you. Talk to the audience about that if you don't mind, Dan.
Yeah. Now, I've done events where the event planners of the board were very, very adamant about the fact that we did the paddle race first and then the live auction second. That's few and far between. I think I do one or two that are like that, and the bulk of everybody else does live auction versus paddle race. Because in the auction industry, when the auctioneer is the one that's primarily making all the money, they tend to listen to you. That's why they listen to us on who to use for consignment. That's why they listen to us on who to use for software, just because we're bringing in the bulk of the revenue, or at least half the revenue half the time. My preference is live auction to paddle raise, and that's basically because of my personality. For me, I use the live auction as a way to get the excitement level up, to make them like me, because I'm just some random dude. I'm not affiliated with Habitat for Humanity or Mint Museum or Levine Children's Hospital. I'm not affiliated with them. So I'm just some random dude up there that's going to ask them for money. So I use the live auction as a way to not only to train them to use their bid cards, to make them feel comfortable with my cadence, to make them pop their bid cards. Because, psychology tells us if we can get them to pop their bid card once, they're more likely to do it again. And that carries over to the paddle raise. So I use the live auction as my, song and dance. Let's have a little fun. Let's raise some money. And then we get to the mission moment where we pull that energy level down and change it. And it's a mood shift. We play the video, we get the speaker, because now you're comfortable with me. And now I'm coming after the philanthropic bidders, because I'm going to give you all an opportunity to participate, not just my 10 live auction people. That's what I prefer.
No, I get it. And that's where most of these, are most thoughts and practices lie. It seems like where the live auction's coming first. I just like to, like I said, I like to call it rapid fire, as I call it. Yeah.
See what other people do.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good. Hey, you said something about software just now. I just want to double click on that if you don't mind. We talk a lot about promoting the live auction and the silent auction and everything early and often, to prepare folks, to get folks especially in our space, getting folks figuratively to pack their bags, get some money in the door, pre-event and whatnot. What do you, because we get this question a lot, so it's good that we have an expert on that does so many events so well. What are you telling folks? So you have so much equity with your clients and they're asking you for software and auction items and things like that. What are you telling them to do pre-event, as far as how far in advance, promotion, all those things, to make sure that the fire's stoked, so to speak, when the night comes?
Yeah, it's funny because I had an email from one of my organizations right before this, and she was asking, hey, typically we send out emails and start the silent auction 7 days before. Should we push it to 10 days before? And then she was asking, should we start the silent auction 30% or 50%? She's like, we've heard people say that they're getting deals on the silent auction. She's like, should we bump it up? And she's asking me this kind of questions. And what I told her was For the silent auction, when you're pinging people and being like, hey, get excited about the event that's coming up, and silent auction is a good way to do that because they can start bidding on items early, and you can start sending them, hey, these are the items coming up for the live auction. Make sure you're prepared, and you do like highlight emails. So I've seen that a lot from organizations that do a highlight email. Hey, here's the live auction items that are coming up. Hey, silent auction is coming up. But as far as like starting something 7 days versus 10 days, I was like, primarily for the silent auction, people will have that eBay mentality where they want to wait till the last minute to see what the actual bid's going to be. And I mean, the amount of revenue that you can generate in 30 minutes down to 15 minutes of doing announcements and telling people, hey, silent auction is going to close in 30 minutes. Silent auction is going to close in 15 minutes. The amount of revenue that you'll generate in that last half an hour is going to be far more than adding on 3 days of just like saying, hey, it's open early. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah, we're a big. I mean, I'm indifferent to 7 and 10, but just open in general. Just that's where we are as a society, I think, right? And that attention piece and what have you. I think it's good just to have things out in the open pre-event. Long story short, I agree. Opinion. Yeah, I think it's good. Another post. You're very prolific on LinkedIn. I'm going to tell folks to reach out to you and show you some support and connect with you on LinkedIn. And your profiles is going to be in the show notes. Cool. Folks, please show Dan some support and follow him on LinkedIn because you'll learn something, as I have. But you mentioned something recently about like not letting board members get in the way.
Yeah.
And hey man, whatever you're comfortable with talking about. But yeah, but like, man, we hear it so much. And we hear, I wish my board raised money. I wish my board helped me fundraise. And we go, well, are you telling them what to say? Now we're not letting boards off the hook. Are you giving boards the info that they need to go get, like all the way down to like the actual copy that you want them to share and things like that to get in their Rolodex, so to speak, and other folks that have capacity. But you were talking about boards talking to dev teams and CEOs and EDs about like, oh, we don't want to do that, or that made us this. It's like, right. What? My opinion is like, well, what's the point? Like, why? What are you there for? You know what I mean? Why?
Yeah, I agree.
Of course, we're going to ask you for money, stuff like that. But talk to the audience about just such a hot topic that's not going away about boards and not letting them get in the way.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about, which post that was. But to answer the first question, when you're talking about like how do we train the board members and how do we train the sponsors? Because one of the worst things is when you have a sponsor buy a whole table and then they just fill it with anybody, right? You need to encourage these people. Hey, when especially your board, if you're going to come in and you're going to fill a table, bring people that have the capacity to give, that want to get tied in with the organization, and don't just say, hey, just come and this, it's going to be a fun night. Like recently, I was asked if I had somebody in Greenville, South Carolina for an auction I was doing, if I had somebody that I could fill a seat with, right? And the person that I work with, she was like, we want somebody that's going to spend. I was like, yeah, I know what you mean, right? Cool. And so I talked to two of my friends and I was like, hey, if you come into this thing, there's going to be an expectation. So I just want to tell you that up front, that, we're looking for you guys to burn $1,000 when you come to this thing. Anyway, they came and they ended up spending $7,000 in this auction, right? Cool. And they had a blast and they loved it. But inviting people that have the capacity to give, just because you as a board member are afraid to ask for money, you got to get over that. That's what you're doing right now. I think people talk about money a whole lot more than they used to. And so it's a lot more common, but you need to be like, hey guys, I'm going to invite you to this event, but it's super important to me. And this mission is very important to me. And I need you to step up. So come have a great time, drink some wine, but find something you want to participate in and help us out. Yeah. I think first of all, that's one of the most important things. The thing you were talking about was too many cooks in the kitchen, man. When board members start being adamant about the way you do things. And it happens all the time. I do a huge event in North Carolina, and last year we did $3.5 million. I mean, the auction itself was like 1.8 million. It was massive, right? But then we'll auction the paddle raise. But one of the board members pulls me aside before the auction starts. I'm trying to get in the game, get my game face on. And she's like, don't read all those impact statements that you usually do, because nobody cares about those. You know what I'm talking about? Impact statements? I do. Yeah. So so like in a paddle race for our nonprofit listeners out there, typically we tie the different levels to the levels of the paddle raise to an impact statement. Like Habitat for Humanity is a good example. For $10,000, you can help frame an entire home. For $5,000, you can put up all the drywall. For $2,500, you can pay for the HVAC, stuff like that, right? And what it does for our bidders is when they see people drop $25,000, $50,000, does my $1,000 really make that much of a difference? But when you can tie it to something like that, it's like, oh, okay, this is like, I'm actually helping 50 kids go to camp. That's huge for me. I'll do that, right?
Yes. Yes.
So she tells me that before I get on stage. She's like, don't do all those impact statements. Nobody wants to hear you read that stuff. Okay. And then I get up on stage. I just completely disregard her, because at the end of the day, I got to raise, for my client, I need to raise as much money as I possibly can. And I know that that's one of the ways I do it. So sometimes, and this is more for like executive directors that deal with this stuff, I realize you got to keep people happy, but your board members don't always know best practices for pulling money. They just don't. And sometimes you just got to be like, okay, yeah, thanks. We'll take that in consideration and move along.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you have to have a difficult conversation too.
Sometimes that's not a best practice. We're not going to do that.
No, I love it. Well, yeah, I mean, that was lovely the way you mentioned about just the dollar increments. And we always say, yeah, this is how many kids we're going to send to camp. We use that all the time because you're tying it back to the mission. You can never lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point. It's so good. I'm glad you shared.
Well, again, it comes back to that relationship thing. Maybe you did have somebody that came in and they sat at a sponsorship table and they were just coming for a date night and they're sitting way in the back of the room and they're not thinking they're going to give anything, but they had a great time. They enjoyed the live auction. They didn't spend money on a live auction item. Then all of a sudden you get down to the paddle raise level and they've already seen $100,000 raise. And now you're asking for $100. Come on, everybody. It's just $100. And they're like, typically people would be like, I've already seen you raise $100,000. There's no reason to do that. But when you say, hey, $100, Habitat for Humanity, that'll put the door on the home. That's the final safety and security. That's the finishing touch. You can just pay for a door. That's awesome. I keep using them as an example, but they're an easy one to
That's easy. No, it's great. It's great. No, we love it. We love it. In closing, I have a question I ask about 90% of our guests, and I'm getting more contextual about it. So I'm going to ask you now. You make it look very easy, but for a lot of folks, event fundraising, just fundraising in general, is hard. It's supposed to be. Anything worthwhile is. It doesn't get easier as you grow either. As you advance the mission, it doesn't get any easier. So my question, you then, event fundraising, good event fundraising is hard. Mm-hmm. For the folks listening that do it, tell them, don't make it more difficult by doing what?
By killing people with your program.
Oh, yeah. Get in the weeds on that, man. Yeah.
For me, that's a big one because, I went through the COVID stuff just like everybody else did. And we switched to business model. We started doing a lot of online shows and zero latency, virtual auctions, right? So we did all that. But one thing that happened post-COVID was the people coming off of that, they just wanted to hang out with friends. They wanted to drink, they wanted to party, they wanted to come and support, and they were going to spend money. But if you beat them to death with your program, you're doing them a disservice. And I only have one auction that I do now, and they probably gone away from it, but that has a keynote speaker. People don't tend to do that anymore. You don't get somebody up there that's going to talk for 20, 25 minutes, right? You want them to come in, you want them to have a blast in the cocktail hour, have a couple of drinks, do some silent auction bidding, sit down for dinner. Hey, here's the welcome and announcements. Here's our sponsors. Thanks very much. Couldn't do it without you. We'll be back in a few moments' time and we'll listen to a couple of stories kind of thing, right? And then they have dinner. You got to give them time to socialize, eat their dinner, and use 15, 20 minutes to talk to their friends. Otherwise, they're going to use that time when you're on stage to try to talk to their friends. Then you come back from dinner, tail end of dinner, you do the, hey, executive director up there, don't forget while we're here, let's bring up the auctioneer. You do your mission moment, you do your paddle raise, boom, everybody's done, let's do some dancing. But don't beat them to death with, two of my sponsors have to talk. We've got 5 speakers. The executive director is going to talk. Oh, and this head chair board member is going to talk, and the person sponsoring the event. It's just too much. So short, tight, quick programs. Let them come in, let them have a blast, let them spend the money, and they'll be grateful for it, and they'll come back next year.
It'd be very, very choosy who you give the microphone to.
You only made that mistake once, Trevor, and then you won't do it again.
I love it, man. I love it. Hey, I know you're based out of North Carolina. Where are you working? Where do you do a lot of your work? Are you in multiple states, stuff like that?
I am, yeah. So I've primarily gotten rid of any of my travel auctions just because I have enough in North Carolina. I'm giving some of my overflow now to a couple of other auctioneers, but so I primarily work out of North Carolina. I've got enough business there to kind of sustain myself. I do a couple in Florida. I'm licensed there, and then for the most part, I do South Carolina and North Carolina as my primary market. So I'm in Charlotte is my biggest market for North Carolina. Do a few in Raleigh, and then Charleston, Columbia, another big market for me in South Carolina.
Cool. All right, good. Yeah, I wanted folks to have some context for your geography. And then Dan, tickled that you came on. I really appreciate the insight and the time. Tell folks the easiest way to find you.
Well, you can find me at Dan Lyles Auctions with an S.com. So if you're looking to find me, or my email, dan@danlylesauctions.com. I got my cell phone on there. You can call me anytime. And I love talking shop too. So if you ever want to call and they're looking for, hey, can you just give us advice? Or maybe they're not working with a fundraising auctioneer, or maybe I'm not even in their state. I could help you find, the top people in your state. Most of us know each other. And those of us that have become top tier, I am including myself in that, but those of us that have become to that level, we tend to know who the major players are in every state. And so if you're looking, Dan Campbell just hooked me up with an auction down here because he does a national auction. He's up in Chicago and farmed out an auction to me down here in North Carolina. So if you reach out to somebody, they can help put you in touch with the person you should know.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, I appreciate you being so forthcoming and generous with your time and information, and being so willing to share. And like we said, man, karma is ROI positive. You're putting some good stuff out there. It's very refreshing, man. You're a gift to the space, and I appreciate you spending so much time with me and with the audience. I know that they're going to get a lot out of it. So appreciate you very much, Dan. It's
man,
a pleasure.
Thanks, Trevor. It was a pleasure, and you didn't even let me plug HGA. You didn't even ask me about consignment or nothing. All right.
Well, we're really bad at self promotion, man. And you know what? Yeah, we don't even use the term consignment because we're I'm not going to get on a soapbox, man. But we're auction items, man. Fundraising tools.
Auction
we're
items.
here. Yeah, we're here to help. Yeah, we let some
guys, man. I'm a big fan of you guys, and I work with Rick and Tom down here in the Southeast, and love those guys, and they're great and they're super helpful. And I've even popped up in my events before, so I'm a big fan of yours. So thanks for all you guys do for the nonprofit space too, man.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah. Hey, everybody, like I said, reach out to Dan. His LinkedIn profile and his website and email will be in the show notes. And you take him up on his offer to talk shop. Obviously, you're very willing to at any time, it sounds like. So appreciate you very much for being so generous with your time, as mentioned. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate you, Dan.
Thanks, Trevor.